The security alarm blared through the building as screens went black across the office. Millions of dollars disappeared by the second while executives panicked until a small voice from the janitor's closet spoke up. But no one imagined what would come next. Where are you watching from today? Drop your location in the comments and don't forget to like and subscribe for more incredible true stories that will touch your heart. Sarah Miller clutched her daughter's small hand as they entered the gleaming skyscraper of Vertex Technologies. The morning sun reflected off the glass walls, creating prisms of light that Sarah could see, but her daughter Lily couldn't. At 6 years old, Lily had been blind since birth, but her other senses had developed remarkably. Today was supposed to be Sarah's first day as the night cleaning staff at Vertex, one of America's fastest-growing tech companies. With no childcare and her regular babysitter sick, she had no choice but to bring Lily along. "Remember what I told you, sweetie. You'll sit quietly in the break room while Mommy cleans." "I'll check on you every 15 minutes, Sarah whispered, kneeling to straighten Lily's small pink backpack filled with Braille books and her favorite stuffed rabbit. "I promise I'll be good, Mommy," Lily said, her unseeing blue eyes somehow finding her mother's face with uncanny precision. "I brought my special headphones too." Those special headphones were Lily's most prized possession, noise-cancelling headphones that connected to her tablet with educational games. Despite her blindness, Lily had shown remarkable intelligence, particularly with numbers and patterns. Her doctors had used words like prodigy and extraordinary cognitive abilities, but such praise didn't pay the bills or cover the specialized medical care Lily needed. As they walked through the lobby, the security guard frowned. "Ma'am, we don't allow children in the building during work hours." "Please," Sarah said, her voice barely above a whisper, "it's just for tonight. My babysitter cancelled last minute, and I really need this job. My daughter is very well behaved." The guard hesitated, then nodded. "One night only, and keep her with you at all times." Relief washed over Sarah as they rode the elevator to the 42nd floor. What the guard didn't know was that Sarah had been struggling since her diagnosis of Ehlers-Danlos syndrome 8 months ago. The rare connective tissue disorder caused her chronic pain and fatigue. Some days she could barely get out of bed. The medical bills had piled up since her husband Mark had walked out on them 2 years ago, claiming he never signed up to raise a blind kid. As they reached the cleaning supply closet, Sarah's supervisor, a stern-faced woman named Mrs. Vaughn, spotted them immediately. "Who is this?" she demanded, pointing at Lily. "My daughter." "I'm so sorry, but my childcare fell through and—" "Absolutely not," Mrs. Vaughn cut her off. "Company policy strictly prohibits bringing family members to work, especially children. This is a corporate environment with sensitive information." "Please," Sarah begged, feeling tears threatening to spill. "It's just for tonight. She'll stay in the break room. She won't touch anything." Mrs. Vaughn's expression hardened. "I'm sorry, but I have to report this to management. Wait here." As Mrs. Vaughn stormed off, Lily tugged at her mother's sleeve. "Mom, are you in trouble because of me?" Sarah's heart broke at the guilt in her daughter's voice. "No, sweetie. It's not your fault. Everything will be okay." But Sarah knew nothing was okay. She needed this job desperately. The night shift paid better, and the health insurance would cover some of Lily's specialized care. If she lost this opportunity, she didn't know what they would do. Little did they know, across the building, something was happening that would change their lives forever. On the 44th floor, Richard Hammond, the 58-year-old CEO and founder of Vertex Technologies, was in the middle of an emergency meeting with his cybersecurity team. Sweat beaded on his forehead as he looked at the projections on the screen. "You're telling me we're under attack right now? How bad is it?" Richard demanded, his normally calm demeanor cracking under pressure. Amber Chen, the head of cybersecurity, typed furiously on her keyboard. It's unlike anything I've seen before. They're using a sophisticated algorithm to bypass all our security protocols. They've already breached the outer defenses and are working their way toward our client data and financial systems. How much time do we have? Richard asked, loosening his tie. Hours, maybe less, Amber replied grimly. If they get into the main server, they could drain every account, steal our proprietary technology, and destroy the company's reputation overnight. We're talking about potential losses of over $1 billion. The room fell silent. Vertex had been Richard's lifework for the past 30 years. From a small startup in his garage to a tech giant employing over 5,000 people, he had built it through relentless innovation and integrity. Now, all of it was at risk. Call everyone in, Richard ordered. I don't care if it's midnight or if they're on vacation. I need every tech brain in this building now. As the team dispersed to make calls, Richard remained alone in the conference room, staring at the constantly changing code on the screen that represented the attack. His thoughts drifted to his late wife, Elizabeth, who had passed away from cancer 5 years ago. She had been his rock, his partner in building this company. "What would you do, Lizzie?" he whispered to the empty room. Meanwhile, 2 floors below, Sarah was being escorted to the HR office by Mrs. Vaughan, who had reported her for bringing Lily to work. Sarah held Lily's hand tightly as they walked the long corridor, the smell of lemon-scented cleaner still on her hands from the few minutes of work she had managed to complete. "Wait here," Mrs. Vaughan instructed, pointing to chairs outside the office. "Mr. Patterson will speak with you shortly." As they sat waiting, Lily tilted her head curiously. "Mum, do you hear that beeping sound?" Sarah listened but heard nothing unusual. "What beeping, sweetie?" "It's coming from everywhere. Like when my tablet gives error messages, but a lot more of them," Lily explained, her forehead creasing with concentration. "And there's a pattern to it." Before Sarah could respond, the door opened and a balding man in his 50s appeared. "Ms. Miller, I'm Robert Patterson from HR. Please come in, alone." "My daughter, she can wait outside. This won't take long," he said firmly. Sarah knelt beside Lily. "I need to go talk to this man for a minute. Will you be okay sitting right here? Don't move from this spot." Lily nodded, pulling out her tablet and headphones from her backpack. As Sarah entered the office, the door closing behind her, she didn't notice the curious expression on her daughter's face as Lily's fingers moved over her tablet screen, her headphones not yet on her ears. Inside the office, Mr. Patterson didn't waste time with pleasantries. "Ms. Miller, your employment is being terminated, effective immediately." The words hit Sarah like a physical blow. "Please, I can explain. Company policy is very clear. Bringing unauthorized individuals, especially minors, into the building is grounds for immediate dismissal. We handle sensitive client information, the security risks alone." "She's just a child," Sarah interrupted, desperation in her voice. "A blind child who would have sat quietly in the break room. I had no alternatives tonight." Mr. Patterson's expression softened slightly. "I sympathize with your situation, but rules are rules. We'll pay you for tonight, but that will be all." Sarah felt the room spin around her. This job had been her last hope. Outside in the hallway, Lily sat with her tablet on her lap, her small fingers moving expertly across the screen. Instead of launching her usual games, she had activated the device's accessibility features, which allowed her to hear the digital signals around her translated into audio patterns. It was something she had discovered by accident months ago, a way of seeing the digital world through sound. What she heard now concerned her. The building's systems were emitting strange signals, different from the usual steady hums of normal operation. These were erratic, aggressive, and somehow wrong. Lily had always been sensitive to patterns and disruptions, a gift her doctors couldn't fully explain. She slid her headphones over her ears and tapped a sequence on her tablet that most adults wouldn't understand. The tablet began converting the digital signals into musical notes, a system Lily had created to help herself make sense of complex data patterns. What she heard was alarming, discordant notes that indicated something was attacking the building's systems. Suddenly the lights flickered, and alarms began to sound faintly in the distance. People began rushing past her in the hallway, their footsteps quick and panicked. Lily remained calm, continuing to listen to the digital chaos unfolding around her. Inside the HR office, the overhead lights blinked, and Mr. Patterson's computer screen went black before displaying a red warning message. His phone rang immediately. "Patterson," he answered, his face growing pale as he listened. "I understand. I'll be right there." Hanging up, he turned to Sarah. "We need to evacuate this floor immediately. There's a security situation." "What kind of situation?" Sarah asked, already standing to retrieve Lily. "Some kind of cyber-attack. They're asking all non-essential personnel to gather in the lobby." He grabbed his jacket and rushed out of the office. Sarah hurried into the hallway where Lily was sitting, her face a mask of intense concentration. "Lily, we need to go. Something's happening." "Mum, the building is sick," Lily said, not removing her headphones. "I can hear it. Someone's trying to hurt it." "What do you mean, sweetie?" Sarah asked, kneeling beside her daughter. "The computers, they're being attacked, like when a virus gets into a body," Lily explained, her unseeing eyes wide with concern. "But I think I can help. The bad code has a pattern, and patterns can be broken." Sarah stared at her daughter in confusion. Before she could respond, the elevator doors nearby opened, and a group of anxious-looking executives rushed out, led by a distinguished grey-haired man Sarah recognized from the company website as Richard Hammond, the CEO. "The server room is this way," one of the executives was saying. "Amber says we have less than 30 minutes before they break through the final firewall." As they hurried past, Lily suddenly stood up. "Excuse me," she called out, her voice small but surprisingly clear. "I think I can help." The group paused, and Richard Hammond looked down at the small blind girl with curiosity and impatience. "Young lady, we're in the middle of an emergency. Where is your guardian?" "I'm her mother," Sarah said quickly, stepping forward. "I'm so sorry. We were just leaving." But Lily persisted. "The attack is using a Fibonacci sequence variant as its base algorithm. That's why your security can't catch it. It's hiding in the mathematical pattern your systems consider natural." The executives exchanged baffled looks. Richard Hammond knelt down to Lily's level. "How could you possibly know that?" he asked, genuine curiosity replacing his impatience. "I can hear it," Lily said simply. "The code makes sounds to me. And this one is singing a song I recognize." A stunned silence fell over the group of executives. Richard Hammond studied the blind child before him, her unseeing eyes somehow radiating intelligence and certainty. "Sir, we don't have time for this," said a tall man in a pinstriped suit. "The attack is accelerating." Richard held up his hand to silence him, his focus remaining on Lily. "What's your name, young lady?" "Lily Miller," she replied confidently. "And the bad code is getting louder. You should take me to where your computers are strongest." Sarah placed protective hands on Lily's shoulders. "I'm sorry, my daughter has an active imagination." "We'll get out of your way." "Wait," Richard interrupted, his gaze shifting between mother and child. "How old is your daughter, Ms. Miller?" 6, Sarah replied hesitantly. "But, and has she had any computer training?" Sarah shook her head. "No formal training. She's blind, but she's very good with her tablet and understands patterns in a way that even her doctors find unusual." Richard made a quick decision. "Bring her with us, now." "Sir," protested the same executive. "This is highly irregular. We can't bring a child into a level 1 security situation. And we can't afford to ignore any possibility right now, Davis," Richard snapped back. "If there's even a 1% chance this child can help, we're taking it." He turned to Sarah. "I assume you're her legal guardian? Do I have your permission?" Sarah hesitated, torn between concern for her daughter and the strange certainty that Lily somehow understood something the adults didn't. "Yes," she finally said, "but I'm coming too." Richard nodded and led the group toward the server room, with Sarah guiding Lily alongside him. As they rushed through the corridors, Richard briefly explained the situation to Sarah. "We're under attack from what appears to be an extremely sophisticated hacking operation. They've already breached multiple layers of security and are moving toward our core systems. If they succeed, Vertex Technologies could lose everything: our intellectual property, our financial resources, our clients' data." "And you think my 6-year-old daughter can help?" Sarah asked incredulously. Richard's expression was grave. "At this point, Ms. Miller, we're out of options and nearly out of time." They reached a secured door with a biometric scanner. Richard placed his palm on it, and the door slid open to reveal a large room filled with rows of servers, cooling systems, and monitors. About a dozen people were frantically working at various stations, their faces illuminated by the blue glow of screens displaying cascading code. As soon as they entered, Lily tilted her head. "It's much louder in here," she said. "The pattern is clearer too." Amber Chen approached them, her expression shifting from stress to confusion at the sight of the small girl. "Richard, what's going on? Who's this?" "This is Lily Miller," Richard said. "She says she can hear the attack pattern." Amber looked skeptical, but was too professional to dismiss anything outright during a crisis. "The attack has evolved. It's rewriting our defenses and will reach the core system in approximately 20 minutes. Lily tugged at Richard's sleeve. "May I use one of your computers, please? I need to show you what I'm hearing." After a brief hesitation, Richard nodded to Amber. "Set her up at your station." Amber reluctantly guided Lily to her workstation, while Sarah watched nervously from a few steps away. The cybersecurity team exchanged baffled glances as the blind child was seated at the main terminal. "Can you make it talk to me?" Lily asked. "My tablet speaks what's on the screen." Amber quickly enabled the text-to-speech function and adjusted the settings for maximum speed, standard practice for visually impaired users. What happened next astonished everyone in the room. As the computer began rapidly reading the code aloud, Lily's fingers moved across the keyboard with incredible speed and precision. She wasn't typing randomly. She was entering commands, navigating through complex security protocols as if she had been doing it her entire life. "How is this possible?" Davis whispered to Richard. "She can't even see the screen." "I don't need to see it," Lily replied, surprising them with her acute hearing. "The pattern is like music. The attack is using prime numbers and Fibonacci sequences to hide inside your security. It's clever, but it's still just a pattern, and patterns have weaknesses." Her small fingers continued to fly across the keyboard as lines of code appeared on the screen. Code she was creating on the fly in response to what she was hearing. "She's building some kind of counter-algorithm," Amber said in disbelief, watching over Lily's shoulder. "But it's like nothing I've ever seen before." At the server room had fallen completely silent, except for the hum of machinery and the rapid-fire voice of the text-to-speech program reading code to Lily. The team of cybersecurity experts gathered around, watching in astonishment as the 6-year-old blind girl worked with a speed and intuition that defied explanation. "She's creating a counterattack that follows the same mathematical principles as the intrusion," Amber explained to Richard in a hushed voice. "It's like she's speaking the same language as the attack, but using it against itself." Sarah stood nearby, her hand pressed to her mouth in shock. She had always known Lily was special, had seen glimpses of her extraordinary abilities with numbers and patterns, but nothing like this. Part of her was terrified. What did this mean for her daughter's future? While another part felt a strange pride. "Mom!" Lily called out, her fingers never pausing on the keyboard. "The bad code is trying to hide in new places. Can someone help me track it?" Amber immediately sat at the adjacent workstation. "Tell me what you need, Lily." "I need to hear the network traffic on the eastern server nodes." "The attack is moving there to regroup," Lily explained, using technical terminology that most adults would struggle to comprehend. Davis leaned toward Richard. "This is impossible. How could she possibly know these things?" Richard shook his head slightly. "I don't know, but it's working. Look at the monitors." Across the wall of screens, the red warning indicators were beginning to stabilize. In some sections, they were even turning green again, indicating secured systems. 14 minutes until they would have reached the core, Amber announced, checking a countdown timer. Lily's countermeasures are slowing them down, but they're adapting. Lily nodded as if she already knew this. They're using a secondary algorithm now. It's more aggressive. Her forehead creased in concentration. I need something that can move faster than they can. A way to be in all places at once. Richard stepped forward. We have a quantum computing prototype on the secure network. It's still experimental, but... Yes! Lily exclaimed. That's perfect. Can you connect me to it? Richard looked at his chief technology officer, who nodded hesitantly. It's risky. The quantum system isn't fully tested with our main network. We don't have a choice, Richard decided. Do it. Now, as the technicians worked to establish the connection, Sarah moved closer to her daughter. Lily, are you okay? Do you need a break? Lily shook her head, her unseeing eyes fixed forward with intense concentration. I can't stop now, Mom. The bad code would win. Then more softly, this is the first time I've felt like my blindness is a gift. I can hear things others can't. Sarah's eyes filled with tears as she gently squeezed her daughter's shoulder. You've always been perfect, exactly as you are. Quantum connection established, announced one of the technicians. Lily immediately began working with the new system, her approach changing to incorporate the quantum computer's unique capabilities. The text-to-speech program struggled to keep up with the flood of data, but Lily seemed to process it effortlessly. She's creating quantum-entangled counter-algorithms, Amber whispered in awe. The attack can't predict where they'll appear in the system. Minutes passed in tense silence as the battle between Lily's defense and the sophisticated attack played out across the monitors. Then suddenly, Lily smiled. Got you, she said softly, pressing the enter key with finality. The effect was immediate. Across the wall of monitors, red warning indicators began switching to green in rapid succession. The attack patterns disintegrated as Lily's counter-algorithms isolated and neutralized the intrusion. She's doing it, Amber said incredulously. She's actually doing it. A spontaneous cheer erupted from the cybersecurity team as the system status returned to normal. Richard stared at the screens, then at the small blind girl who had just saved his company from disaster. Lily removed her headphones, suddenly looking very much like the 6-year-old child she was. The bad code is gone now, she announced simply. Your building isn't sick anymore. The following morning, Sarah sat nervously in a plush chair outside Richard Hammond's executive office on the top floor of Vertex Technologies. Lily was beside her, running her fingers over a braille book, seemingly unaffected by the previous night's events. After the crisis had been averted, Richard had asked them to return in the morning, promising a proper discussion about what happened. Sarah had barely slept, her mind racing with questions and concerns about what this all meant for Lily's future. The door opened, and Richard's assistant emerged. "Mr. Hammond will see you now," she said with a smile. Sarah took Lily's hand and led her into the spacious office. Sunlight streamed through floor-to-ceiling windows that offered a panoramic view of the city. Richard stood as they entered, coming around his desk to greet them. "Ms. Miller, Lily, thank you for coming," he said warmly, shaking Sarah's hand and then gently touching Lily's shoulder. "Please, have a seat. Can I offer you anything? Water, coffee, perhaps hot chocolate for Lily?" "Hot chocolate sounds nice," Lily replied with a smile. After his assistant had brought their drinks and left, closing the door behind her, Richard sat across from them, his expression turning serious. "I want to begin by thanking you both, especially you, Lily. Our cybersecurity team has completed their preliminary analysis, and they've confirmed what we already knew. Without your intervention, Vertex would have suffered catastrophic losses. The attack was unlike anything they've seen before." Sarah nodded stiffly, still processing the events of the previous night. "Mr. Hammond, I appreciate your gratitude, but I'm concerned about what happens next. Lily is just a child. A special child, yes, but still very young and vulnerable." Richard leaned forward. "I understand your concerns completely. That's exactly why I wanted to meet with you today." He took a deep breath. "Ms. Miller, I'm aware that you were briefly employed by our cleaning service and that your employment was terminated due to bringing Lily to work. I want to apologize for that." "You don't need to apologize. Rules are rules," Sarah said, though the bitterness in her voice was evident. "Actually, I do," Richard insisted. "Because if our HR department had shown a bit more compassion and flexibility, you wouldn't have been in that hallway at that precise moment, and my company would likely be in ruins today." He smiled at Lily. "Sometimes fate works in mysterious ways." Lily sipped her hot chocolate, leaving a small chocolate moustache on her upper lip that Sarah gently wiped away with a napkin. "I understand from our background check that you're a single mother, Ms. Miller," Richard continued, "and that Lily requires specialized medical care and educational resources." Sarah tensed. "You ran a background check on us." "Standard procedure after a security event," Richard explained apologetically. "But I promise the information won't go beyond this room." He paused. "I also understand that you've recently been diagnosed with Ehlers-Danlos syndrome." Sarah's eyes widened in surprise. "That's quite thorough for a background check." Richard had the grace to look slightly embarrassed. "I wanted to understand your situation fully before making my proposal." "Proposal?" Sarah echoed cautiously. "Yes." Richard stood and walked to the window, gazing out at the city for a moment before turning back to them. "Ms. Miller, I'd like to offer you a job at Vertex Technologies. A real job, not cleaning services, although that's honorable work too. We need someone to coordinate our new accessibility initiatives, ensuring our products and workplace are fully inclusive for people with disabilities. Your experience with Lily makes you uniquely qualified." Sarah stared at him in disbelief. "But I don't have any corporate experience. My background is in elementary education before I had to take whatever jobs I could find after Lily was born and her father left." "Experience can be gained. Perspective and insight are harder to come by," Richard replied. "The position comes with comprehensive health insurance that would cover both your condition and Lily's specialized needs, a substantial salary, and flexible work arrangements so you can attend to Lily's appointments." Sarah felt tears welling up in her eyes. After years of struggle, of being one missed paycheck away from disaster, it seemed too good to be true. "Why would you do this for us?" Richard's expression softened. "Partly because you saved my company, but also because 30 years ago, I was given a chance when someone saw potential in me that others didn't. I believe in paying that forward." He turned his attention to Lily, And as for you, young lady, I have a separate proposal." Lily perked up, her face turning toward the sound of Richard's voice. "What kind of proposal?" "Our cybersecurity team would like to create a special internship program for gifted young minds. You would be our first participant. It would be educational, age-appropriate, and completely optional. You would work with our team to develop new security protocols based on your unique way of hearing code patterns." "Like a job?" Lily asked excitedly. "More like a very special after-school program," Richard clarified with a chuckle. "With proper compensation set aside in a trust for your education. All decisions would, of course, require your mother's approval." 3 months later, Sarah sat at her new desk on the 40th floor of Vertex Technologies, reviewing a proposal for making the company's latest software more accessible for users with visual impairments. Her office, her very own office with a door and a nameplate that read Sarah Miller, Director of Accessibility Initiatives, had a view of the city park and was decorated with Lily's artwork and family photos. The transition hadn't been easy. There had been suspicious glances and whispered comments from some employees who believed she had only gotten the position because of Lily's abilities. But Sarah had thrown herself into learning everything she could about digital accessibility, corporate policies, and the tech industry. Her background in education had proven surprisingly relevant, helping her communicate complex concepts in understandable terms. A knock at her door interrupted her thoughts. It was Amber Chen, now a close friend and mentor to both Sarah and Lily. "Ready for the meeting?" Amber asked. "Lily's already in the conference room, charming everyone as usual," Sarah laughed, gathering her tablet and notes. "That girl could charm the birds from the trees. Is Richard there yet?" "Just arrived. The investors are with him." Sarah felt a flutter of nervousness. Today's meeting was important, a demonstration of the revolutionary cybersecurity protocol that Lily had helped develop, which Vertex planned to license to other companies. If successful, it would not only cement Vertex's position as an industry leader, but also generate millions in new revenue. As they walked to the conference room, Amber updated Sarah on their progress. The final tests exceeded all expectations. Lily's ability to hear patterns in code translated beautifully into the algorithm. "We've named it Nightingale in her honor." "She loved that," Sarah said with a smile. "Though she's been talking about adding something she calls harmonic distortion layers to make it even stronger." Amber shook her head in amazement. "Sometimes I forget she's only 6, the way her mind works." They entered the conference room where about 20 people were gathered, including Richard Hammond, several Vertex executives, and a group of serious-looking investors. Lily sat in a special chair designed to accommodate her small frame, her fingers moving across a braille display connected to a computer. She wore a pretty blue dress and had insisted on having her hair done in what she called business braids for the occasion. "Ah, here they are," Richard said warmly as they entered. "Everyone, you know Amber Chen, our Chief of Cybersecurity, and this is Sarah Miller, our Director of Accessibility Initiatives, and more importantly, Lily's mother." Sarah nodded politely to the group as she took her seat beside Lily, who reached for her hand under the table. Despite the confidence Lily showed in her work, she was still a child who sometimes needed her mother's reassurance. "We've brought you here today to witness something truly revolutionary," Richard continued, addressing the investors. 3 months ago, Vertex Technologies faced an existential threat, a cyber attack so sophisticated it nearly brought us to our knees. He nodded toward Lily. "We were saved by the extraordinary abilities of this young lady, who has since been working with our team to develop what we believe is the most advanced cybersecurity protocol in existence." One of the investors, a stern-looking woman in her 60s, raised an eyebrow. With all due respect, Mr. Hammond, are you suggesting that your company's future is dependent on the input of a child? Before Richard could respond, Lily spoke up. I'm not just any child, Ma'am. I'm a child who hears what others can't. Her voice was clear and confident, surprising even Sarah. Would you like me to demonstrate? The woman looked taken aback, but nodded. Amber stepped forward. We've prepared a demonstration. With your permission, we'll launch a simulated attack against a test system using the same methods that nearly compromised Vertex 3 months ago. Then we'll activate the Nightingale Protocol. The presentation began with a technical explanation of the attack methodology, most of which went over Sarah's head despite her months of immersion in the tech world. She watched Lily instead, marveling at how her daughter sat patiently, occasionally running her fingers over the braille display to follow along with what was being presented. When it came time for the demonstration, Lily took center stage. With her headphones on, she narrated what she was hearing as the simulated attack progressed, explaining in remarkably clear terms how the Nightingale Protocol was identifying and neutralizing the threat in real time. The attack is using what sounds like a minor key to me, trying to find resonance points in the system, Lily explained. But Nightingale is responding with counter-harmonies that create dissonance in the attack pattern, forcing it to reveal itself. On the large screen at the front of the room, visualizations showed the attack being systematically dismantled by the protocol. The investors leaned forward in their seats, their initial skepticism giving way to genuine interest. The truly revolutionary aspect, Amber added, is that Nightingale learns and adapts with each encounter. It doesn't just repel attacks, it becomes stronger and more sophisticated in response to them. As the demonstration concluded, the room erupted in applause. The stern-faced investor who had questioned Lily's involvement earlier now looked thoroughly impressed. That was remarkable, she admitted. How soon can this be brought to market? Richard smiled. We're preparing for a limited release next quarter with full deployment by year's end. And the best part? He looked at Lily with genuine affection. This is just the beginning of what this extraordinary young mind can accomplish. 6 months after the cyber attack that had changed their lives, Sarah and Lily moved into their new home. A beautiful 3-bedroom house in a safe neighborhood with excellent schools, including a specialized program for gifted children with disabilities. The trust fund Richard had established for Lily was growing steadily, ensuring her future education and medical needs would be covered. Sarah's health had improved too, with access to proper treatment for her Ehlers-Danlos syndrome and the flexibility to work from home when she needed to manage her symptoms. Life had transformed so dramatically that sometimes Sarah found herself waiting for the other shoe to drop. Good fortune this abundant seemed almost too perfect to last. On a crisp Saturday morning in October, Sarah was preparing breakfast when the doorbell rang. Lily, who had been reading a braille book at the kitchen table, perked up. Someone's here. I wonder who that could be this early, Sarah said, wiping her hands on a towel as she went to answer the door. When she opened it, she froze. Standing on her porch was a face she hadn't seen in 4 years, but would recognize anywhere. Mark Miller, Lily's father. Hello, Sarah, he said, looking uncomfortable but determined. It's been a long time. Sarah's hand tightened on the doorknob. What are you doing here, Mark? He shifted his weight, glancing past her into the house. I wanted to see Lily and talk to you. After 4 years of silence, not a phone call, not a birthday card, not a dime of child support. Sarah's voice was low but intense, mindful that Lily might hear. Mark had the grace to look ashamed. I know I have no right to show up like this, but I've changed, Sarah. I've been sober for 2 years now, and I've been doing a lot of work on myself. Sarah started to close the door. I'm glad you're doing better, but that doesn't erase what you did. Wait, Mark said urgently. There's something else. I saw the article about Lily in Tech Innovator magazine, about how she helped save Vertex Technologies and developed some kind of security system. The pieces suddenly clicked into place. So that's why you're here. Now that Lily's accomplished something remarkable, you want back in her life? Mark's expression hardened slightly. That's not fair. I made mistakes, terrible mistakes, but she's still my daughter. Mom? Who's at the door? Lily called from inside the house. Sarah closed her eyes briefly, gathering her composure. She had always told Lily the truth about her father, that he had left because he couldn't handle her disability, but that it was his loss, not Lily's fault. She had never demonized Mark, believing that Lily would form her own opinions when she was older. It's someone from a long time ago, Sarah called back, then lowered her voice. You need to leave, Mark. If you genuinely want to reconnect with Lily, we can discuss it like adults, but not by ambushing us at our home. Is it my dad? Lily's voice came from much closer now, and Sarah turned to find her daughter standing in the hallway, her head tilted in that curious way she had when trying to place a sound or a voice. Mark's eyes widened at the sight of his daughter, now so much taller and more mature than the toddler he'd abandoned. Yes, Lily, he said, his voice thick with emotion. It's your dad. Lily stood very still for a moment, processing this information. Then she took a few careful steps forward. You sound different than I remember. You probably don't remember me much at all, Mark said gently. You were very young when I left. I remember more than you think, Lily replied, with a directness that made both adults wince. You yelled a lot, and you smelled like the stuff that makes Mom clean the bathroom extra well. Sarah suppressed a small smile at Lily's description of alcohol. That was a different me, Mark said, clearly uncomfortable. I've changed a lot since then. Why did you come back now? Lily asked, cutting straight to the heart of the matter with the bluntness typical of children her age. Mark hesitated, glancing at Sarah. I saw an article about you, about how smart you are, and the amazing things you've done. Lily's expression didn't change. So you didn't come back when I was just blind, Lily. You came back when I was famous, Lily. The silence that followed was deafening. Mark opened and closed his mouth several times, but no words came out. Sarah placed a protective hand on Lily's shoulder. I think that's enough for today. Mark, if you want to have a relationship with Lily, you need to do it the right way. Contact me through my lawyer, and we can set up a proper visitation schedule after Lily has had time to process this and decide if it's what she wants. Mark looked like he wanted to argue, but finally nodded. I understand. I'll do that. He looked at Lily one more time. I really am proud of you, Lily, and I'm sorry for everything. After he left, Sarah guided Lily back to the kitchen, her heart racing. Are you okay, sweetie? Lily climbed back onto a chair at the breakfast table. I think so. Is it weird that I don't feel much? I thought I'd be sad or happy if I ever met him, but I just feel curious. Sarah hugged her daughter, amazed once again by her resilience. That's not weird at all. Feelings are complicated, especially about people who've hurt us. Do you think he really changed? Lily asked, returning to her interrupted breakfast. Sarah chose her words carefully. People can change if they work hard at it. But real change takes time to prove. The unexpected appearance of Mark cast a shadow over what had otherwise been months of remarkable progress. While Sarah tried to maintain their normal routine, she couldn't help but worry about his sudden interest in reconnecting with Lily, especially given the timing. 2 weeks after Mark's visit, Sarah sat in Richard Hammond's office discussing the upcoming launch of Nightingale 2.0, but her mind kept drifting to her personal concerns. Sarah? Richard's voice broke through her distraction. You seem a million miles away today. She sighed, setting down the report she'd been pretending to read. I'm sorry, Richard. I've had a lot on my mind lately. Richard leaned back in his chair, his expression kind. Anything you'd like to talk about? I'm told I'm a decent listener. Sarah hesitated. She had grown to respect Richard immensely over the past months, not just as her employer, but as a mentor who had taken a genuine interest in both her and Lily's well-being. Still, mixing personal problems with professional relationships was risky. "It's Lily's father," she finally admitted. He showed up at our house 2 weeks ago out of the blue, after 4 years of complete silence. Richard's eyebrows rose. That must have been quite a shock. How did Lily handle it? Better than I did, honestly. She's so measured in her responses sometimes, like she's analyzing everything, even her own emotions. Sarah shook her head. But what bothers me is the timing. He saw the article about Lily in Tech Innovator. I can't help wondering if he's just interested in her now because she's become somewhat of a minor celebrity. That's a valid concern, Richard acknowledged. Fame tends to attract people with mixed motives. He's requested visitation rights through his lawyer, Sarah continued, and part of me thinks Lily deserves a chance to know her father. But another part is terrified he'll hurt her again, or worse, try to exploit her abilities somehow. Richard was silent for a moment, clearly choosing his words carefully. I don't have children of my own, as you know. Elizabeth and I tried for many years, but it wasn't in the cards for us. His expression grew wistful before he continued. But I've observed enough families to know that there's no perfect solution to situations like this. All you can do is what you think is best for Lily, while being honest with her throughout the process. That's just it. I don't know what's best anymore, Sarah admitted. When it was just the two of us struggling to get by, everything was simpler in a way. Now there are so many factors to consider, so many people involved in our lives. Richard nodded thoughtfully. Have you considered getting a formal custody agreement in place, something that would legally protect both you and Lily? My lawyer mentioned that. Apparently, since Mark abandoned us and provided no support, I could potentially get full legal custody with only limited visitation rights for him, Sarah explained. But legal battles are expensive, even with my new salary. Vertex has excellent legal resources that are available to all our employees, Richard offered. I'd be happy to connect you with someone who specializes in family law. He paused. Not to overstep, but I feel a certain responsibility for both you and Lily. Your daughter saved this company, and you've become an invaluable part of our team. Sarah felt a wave of gratitude. Thank you, Richard. That would be incredibly helpful. As she left his office a short while later, Sarah felt lighter than she had in days. She had spent so many years handling everything on her own that accepting help still felt strange, but she was learning. That evening, as she helped Lily prepare for bed, her daughter asked an unexpected question. Mom, do you think I should spend time with my dad? Sarah sat on the edge of Lily's bed, taking a moment to formulate her response. That's a big question, sweetie. What do you think? Lily's fingers fidgeted with the edge of her blanket. I'm curious about him, and sometimes I think about what it would be like to have a dad like other kids. But then I remember that he left because I was blind, and I wonder if he'd leave again if I wasn't useful anymore. Sarah's heart ached at her daughter's perceptiveness. Oh, Lily, first of all, your father didn't leave because you were blind. He left because he wasn't strong enough to handle the challenges. That's about his weakness, not about you. And second, you are so much more than useful. You're kind, brilliant, funny, and brave. Anyone would be lucky to know you, abilities or not. But what if he just wants to know famous Lily, like I said before? She persisted. Sarah stroked her daughter's hair. That's what worries me, too. But here's what I think. We can start very slowly. Maybe supervised visits where I'm present, too. If he's sincere about wanting to be in your life, he'll respect those boundaries and prove over time that he's reliable. And if he's not, then we'll know, and we can adjust accordingly. Lily considered this for a moment, then nodded. That sounds fair. Like a test period. Sarah couldn't help but smile at her daughter's practical approach. Exactly like a test period. And remember, no matter what happens with your dad, you and I are a team. That won't ever change. I know, Lily said, reaching out to touch her mother's face in the gentle way she had. We're the Miller girls. Unstoppable. As Sarah turned out the light and left Lily's room, she reflected on how much their lives had changed in just 6 months. From desperate circumstances to security and opportunity. From isolation to a community of support. Whatever challenges Mark's reappearance might bring, they would face them together, just as they always had. The Nightingale 2.0 launch event was held in Vertex Technologies' Grand Auditorium, with hundreds of industry professionals, media representatives, and potential clients in attendance. The stage was set with sleek digital displays showcasing the revolutionary cybersecurity system that had put Vertex years ahead of its competitors. Sarah watched from the wings as Richard Hammond delivered the opening address, speaking passionately about the importance of innovative thinking and fresh perspectives in technology. Beside her, Lily waited patiently in a beautiful navy blue dress, her hair arranged in elegant braids, adorned with small silver clips that matched the braille pendant around her neck, a gift from the cybersecurity team to commemorate the launch. And now, Richard was saying, I'd like to introduce the extraordinary team behind Nightingale. First, our Chief of Cybersecurity, Amber Chen. Amber walked onto the stage to enthusiastic applause, her usual casual attire replaced by a sharp business suit. Next, the person who has transformed how Vertex thinks about accessibility and inclusion, making our products better for everyone, our Director of Accessibility Initiatives, Sarah Miller. Sarah took a deep breath and stepped onto the stage, still not entirely comfortable with public attention, but growing more confident with each event. She smiled and waved briefly before taking her place beside Amber. And finally, Richard continued, his voice warm with pride, the remarkable young mind whose unique perspective changed everything, Lily Miller. The applause was thunderous as Sarah extended her hand back toward the wings. A stagehand gently guided Lily forward until she reached her mother, who led her to the center of the stage. Though only 7 years old now, Lily carried herself with poise beyond her years, smiling in the direction of the audience. As the presentation proceeded, each team member explained aspects of the Nightingale system, with Lily demonstrating how her ability to hear code patterns had been translated into an algorithm that could predict and neutralize cyber threats with unprecedented efficiency. From her position on stage, Sarah scanned the audience, taking in the impressed expressions and enthusiastic response. Suddenly, her gaze landed on a familiar face in the third row. Mark. He hadn't mentioned attending the event during their cautious email exchanges about visitation arrangements. Sarah tensed, but maintained her professional composure as the presentation continued. After the formal demonstration, the event shifted to a reception where the team could mingle with attendees. Sarah kept Lily close, guiding her through conversations with industry leaders who were eager to meet the child prodigy behind Nightingale. Ms. Miller, a journalist, approached them, recording device in hand. Vanessa Wong from Tech Chronicle. I was wondering if I could ask Lily a few questions. Before Sarah could respond, another voice cut in. Actually, I'd like to speak with them first, if you don't mind. Mark stood there looking uncomfortable, but determined in a suit that seemed newly purchased. The journalist, sensing tension, nodded and stepped away, promising to catch up with them later. Mark, Sarah acknowledged coolly. I didn't know you'd be here. I wanted to see what Lily's been working on, he replied, then knelt to Lily's level. Hi, Lily, it's Dad. Your presentation was amazing. Lily tilted her head. How did you get in? This was an invitation-only event. Mark looked slightly embarrassed. I have a friend who works for one of the tech blogs covering the launch. He got me in as his +1. Sarah raised an eyebrow but said nothing. Lily, however, wasn't finished with her questions. Why didn't you tell us you were coming? Mom and I have been emailing with you about visits. I wanted to surprise you, Mark said, and I wanted to see you in your element, doing the incredible things I've heard about. Lily's expression remained neutral. You mean you wanted to see if the articles were true? Mark flinched slightly at her directness. That's not. I just wanted to be proud of you in person. Mr. Miller, Richard Hammond's voice interrupted as he approached their small group. I don't believe we've been introduced. I'm Richard Hammond, CEO of Vertex Technologies. His tone was polite, but there was a protective edge to it that Sarah appreciated. Mark Miller, Mark replied, straightening up to shake Richard's hand. Lily's father. Ah, Richard said, his expression revealing nothing. How interesting that you're here today. Sarah has become an invaluable member of our executive team, and Lily's contributions to Vertex have been extraordinary. So I've heard, Mark said, a hint of defensiveness in his voice. That's why I wanted to be here, to support my daughter. Richard smiled diplomatically. Family support is certainly important. Sarah has done a remarkable job raising Lily on her own these past years. The emphasis on her own wasn't lost on Mark, whose jaw tightened slightly. Sensing the tension, Lily spoke up. Mr. Hammond, is it time for the demonstration I prepared with Miss Chen? Indeed it is, Richard confirmed, clearly grateful for the change of subject. Several of our most important potential clients are particularly interested in that portion of the presentation. Sarah placed her hand on Lily's shoulder. We should get going then. Mark, we can talk more about the visitation schedule through email, as we've been doing. Mark looked like he wanted to say more, but nodded reluctantly. Of course. It was good to see you, Lily. I'll be in touch. As they walked away, Richard leaned close to Sarah. Everything all right? Yes, she said, though her voice lacked conviction. Just unexpected. I can have security escort him out if he's causing problems, Richard offered quietly. Sarah shook her head. That's not necessary. He is Lily's father, for better or worse. Fair enough, Richard conceded, but the offer stands if you change your mind. As they rejoined Amber for the next demonstration, Sarah couldn't shake the uneasy feeling that Mark's sudden interest in Lily would complicate their lives in ways she couldn't yet foresee. He had always been impulsive and ambitious, traits that had initially attracted her to him, but had ultimately made him unreliable as a partner and father. Now, with Lily's growing recognition in the tech world, Sarah worried about what he might do to insert himself back into their lives. For now, though, she pushed those concerns aside. Today was about celebrating Lily's extraordinary achievement and the bright future ahead of them, a future they had earned through perseverance, resilience, and a bit of unexpected good fortune. But as the event continued, Sarah couldn't help noticing how Mark lingered at the edges of the room, watching Lily with an interest that seemed to go beyond mere paternal pride. In the weeks following the Nightingale launch, Mark's presence in their lives grew increasingly persistent. The carefully structured visitation schedule, initially just 2 hours every Sunday in a neutral location with Sarah present, soon faced constant pressure from Mark to expand. He brought extravagant gifts that Sarah often had to refuse, showed up at Lily's school events uninvited, and repeatedly brought up the idea of taking Lily to tech conferences as father-daughter bonding. I just think she should see the industry from different angles, Mark argued during one Sunday visit at a local cafe. I have contacts at Dynamicsphere who are dying to meet her. Sarah felt her patience wearing thin. We've discussed this, Mark. Lily isn't going to any industry events without me, and only those approved by Vertex's PR team. Richard has been very clear about protecting her from exploitation. Richard this, Richard that, Mark muttered. What is he to you two anyway? More than just a boss from what I've seen. Sarah felt her cheeks flush with anger. Richard is a mentor and friend who stepped up when Lily and I needed support, unlike some people I could mention. Lily, who had been quietly reading a Braille menu beside them, suddenly spoke up. Mom and Mr. Hammond are just friends, Dad. He helps us because he's kind and because my work helps his company. It's mutually beneficial. Both adults turned to look at her, startled by her mature assessment. At 7 years old, Lily had developed an uncanny ability to cut through emotional tensions with logical precision. Well, I'm back now, Mark said, reaching for Lily's hand. And I want to be part of your success story, too. My success story? Lily repeated thoughtfully. That's an interesting way to put it. Later that evening, as Sarah tucked Lily into bed, her daughter raised a question that had clearly been bothering her. Mom, why does Dad keep talking about my abilities like they're something he can show off? Mr. Hammond never does that. Sarah sat on the edge of the bed, choosing her words carefully. Some people see value in things they can use or show to others. Others see value in the things themselves, just as they are. Which one is Dad? Lily asked, though her tone suggested she already knew the answer. I think your father is still figuring that out, Sarah replied diplomatically. He missed a lot of years with you, and he's trying to find his place. But he keeps pushing, Lily observed, and he makes you upset. Sarah sighed. Adult relationships can be complicated, sweetie. I'm trying to give your dad a chance to be in your life, but with boundaries that keep you safe and happy. I think... Lily hesitated, then continued with characteristic directness. I think he wants to use me to get money or attention. I heard him talking on the phone before you arrived at the cafe today. He was telling someone that access to the blind genius kid could be worth a lot. Sarah felt a cold knot form in her stomach. You're sure about this? Lily nodded solemnly. He didn't know I was in the bathroom stall. I hear really well, you know. I know you do, Sarah said, mind racing. Thank you for telling me. We'll figure this out together, okay? The next morning, Sarah requested an urgent meeting with Richard and Vertex's legal team. As she explained what Lily had overheard, Richard's expression darkened. We've been worried about something like this, he admitted. Our security team flagged several attempts by tech journalists to get more access to Lily, and there have been rumors about competitors trying to learn more about how Nightingale works. What can we do? Sarah asked. Patricia Winters, Vertex's chief legal counsel, spoke up. From what you've told us about your history with Mark, we could potentially seek a modification to your custody arrangement based on evidence that he intends to exploit Lily for financial gain. It would mean going to court, however. I'd like to avoid that if possible, Sarah said. Court battles are messy, and Lily would inevitably be caught in the middle. Richard leaned forward. What if we offer Mark something he wants more than using Lily for access? Sarah raised an eyebrow. What did you have in mind? A consulting position? Richard suggested. Something legitimate but closely supervised. It keeps him within our sphere of influence where we can monitor him, gives him the industry connection he seems to want, but separates him from directly using Lily for gain. You'd hire my ex? Sarah asked incredulously. Richard shrugged. Keep your friends close and your enemies closer, as they say. Besides, everyone deserves a chance to change, don't they? The proposition was presented to Mark the following week in Richard's office. Sarah watched with a mixture of skepticism and hope as Mark listened to the offer, a 6-month consulting contract with Vertex's marketing department, helping to develop strategies for the consumer rollout of products based on Nightingale technology. This is a legitimate position, Richard emphasized, with competitive pay and benefits. But it comes with conditions. What kind of conditions? Mark asked, his expression guarded but interested. First, you maintain the current visitation schedule with Lily. No changes, no pushing for more until the court feels it's appropriate, Richard said. Second, you don't discuss Lily or her work with anyone outside Vertex. No journalists, no competitors, no conference organizers. Third, you report directly to our marketing director, not to Sarah or the cybersecurity team. Mark glanced at Sarah, who kept her expression carefully neutral. And if I say no, Patricia Winters stepped in. Then we proceed with a legal motion to modify custody based on evidence suggesting intent to exploit a minor for financial gain. Ms. Miller would seek full legal custody with supervised visitation only. Mark's face flushed. That's blackmail. No, Richard replied calmly. It's a choice. You can be part of the Vertex family and build a healthy relationship with your daughter, or you can pursue whatever other plans you had in mind and face the consequences. After a tense silence, Mark nodded. I'll take the job. Over the next few months, an uneasy equilibrium established itself. Mark threw himself into his new role with surprising enthusiasm and competence. His background in sales, which Sarah had forgotten about from their early days together, served him well in the marketing department. He maintained the visitation schedule without complaint and even began attending parent-teacher conferences at Lily's school, showing genuine interest in her education beyond her tech abilities. He seems to be making an effort, Sarah admitted to Amber during their weekly lunch. I'm cautiously optimistic. Really, Amber nodded, though her expression remained skeptical. Just keep your eyes open. People can play the long game when there's enough at stake. Lily says he's different when they're together now, Sarah continued, less focused on her genius and more interested in normal father-daughter things. They built a model solar system last weekend. Oh, kids need that normalcy, Amber agreed. Especially kids like Lily, who have so many extraordinary pressures on them. Those pressures had indeed been mounting. As Nightingale's success grew, so did the demand for Lily's involvement in new projects. Richard had been protective, limiting her work to just 6 hours per week and ensuring it remained educational and age-appropriate. But the tech world had a voracious appetite for prodigies, and Lily's story, the blind girl who heard code and saved a billion-dollar company, had captured imaginations worldwide. We've had another request for Lily to speak at a conference, Sarah told Richard during their monthly review meeting. This time, it's the International Symposium on Accessible Technology. It actually seems worthwhile. Richard considered this. What does Lily think? She's interested, especially since it focuses on technology for people with disabilities. She says she wants to inspire other kids to see their differences as strengths. Then I think we should consider it, Richard said. With the usual protections in place, of course. Those protections had become standard procedure. No photographs without Sarah's explicit approval. No questions about Lily's blindness or personal life. No sessions longer than 30 minutes. And always with either Sarah or Amber accompanying her. The symposium was held in Chicago the following month. Lily's presentation, a 15-minute talk about how different sensory experiences could lead to innovation, received a standing ovation. As they left the stage, a woman approached them, her white cane identifying her as visually impaired. Lily Miller? My name is Dr. Eleanor Perez. I lead a research program at the National Institute for Sensory Innovation. I was incredibly moved by your presentation. Sarah watched as Lily's face lit up at meeting another successful blind person. Dr. Perez knelt to Lily's level, speaking directly to her rather than through Sarah, something Lily always appreciated. You've accomplished remarkable things already, Dr. Perez continued, but I wonder if you've had the opportunity to explore other aspects of your abilities beyond coding. There's fascinating research being done on synesthetic processing of information, people who experience one sense through another, as you do with sound and code patterns. I'd love to learn more, Lily said eagerly. Sometimes I try to explain how I hear patterns, but most people don't understand. I understand perfectly, Dr. Perez said with a warm smile. In fact, I experience something similar with mathematical equations. I feel them as textures. As the two continued their animated conversation, Sarah felt a profound sense of relief. Here was someone who could connect with Lily in ways that even she, as a loving mother, couldn't. Someone who understood the experience of navigating the world without sight, but with extraordinary gifts. What Sarah didn't notice was Mark watching the interaction intently from across the room, his expression calculating as he took out his phone and discreetly photographed Dr. Perez. The research program at the National Institute for Sensory Innovation became a new focal point in Lily's life. With Richard's blessing and Vertex's support, Lily began participating in Dr. Perez's studies twice a month, exploring the full extent of her synesthetic abilities in a scientific context. For the first time, Lily was surrounded by other people, both children and adults, who experienced the world in similarly unique ways. "Mom, there's a boy there who tastes colors," Lily exclaimed after one session, "and Dr. Perez says my way of hearing code patterns is called algorithmic auditory synesthesia. Isn't that cool? I'm helping them create a whole new category." Sarah had never seen her daughter so animated about something outside of her work at Vertex. While Lily had always been remarkably self-possessed, there had been a certain isolation to her experience that Sarah had been powerless to bridge. Now, Lily was part of a community that understood her in ways no one else could. "Dr. Perez says I might be able to help design new learning tools for blind kids," Lily continued excitedly. "Tools that translate visual information into sound patterns that make sense to our brains." "That sounds wonderful, sweetie," Sarah said, squeezing her daughter's hand as they walked to the car. "I'm so proud of how you're using your gifts to help others." "It feels right," Lily said simply, "like what I'm supposed to be doing." The research work complemented Lily's ongoing contributions at Vertex, where Nightingale 2.0 had been successfully launched and was now protecting the digital assets of hundreds of major corporations worldwide. Richard had kept his promise to ensure Lily's work remained educational and limited, with most of her compensation going into a trust for her future. As the one-year anniversary of the cyber-attack approached, Richard proposed a small private celebration for the team that had created Nightingale. "Nothing flashy," he assured Sarah. "Just a dinner to mark how far we've all come." The dinner was held in a private room at an upscale restaurant. The original cybersecurity team was there, along with Sarah and Lily, and a few key executives who had supported the project from the beginning. To Sarah's surprise, Mark had also been invited. "Marketing was crucial to Nightingale's success," Richard explained when she questioned his presence, "and he's been doing excellent work. Besides, he is Lily's father." Throughout the evening, Sarah watched as Mark charmed the group with his natural salesmanship. He had always been charismatic. It was what had attracted her to him initially, before his drinking and inability to handle responsibility had revealed the darker sides of his personality. Sober and focused, he was once again the engaging man she had fallen for all those years ago. "He's different," Amber observed, following Sarah's gaze. "The question is whether it's a genuine change or just a performance." "I want to believe it's real," Sarah admitted, "for Lily's sake." As the evening progressed, Richard raised his glass in a toast. "To the extraordinary team that saved Vertex and created something revolutionary. And especially to Lily, whose unique perspective changed everything." Everyone applauded as Lily smiled shyly. Then Richard continued, "I have an announcement to make. As you know, Nightingale has exceeded all our expectations. It's not only secured Vertex's future, but transformed the cybersecurity landscape. And now, we're ready for the next phase." He nodded to Amber, who took over. "We're calling it Nightingale Nexus. It's an expansion of the core technology to create a fully integrated security ecosystem that can protect everything from major corporate networks to individual smart home devices. And," Richard added, "we want Lily to be central to its development, if she's interested, of course." All eyes turned to Lily, who sat up straighter. "What would I do exactly?" "You'd work with a dedicated team to extend your auditory pattern recognition to new types of threats and applications," Amber explained. "It would be a more formal role than your current one, with more resources at your disposal." Mark leaned forward. "That sounds like a lot of responsibility for a 7-year-old. What kind of time commitment are we talking about?" Sarah noted his use of "we," as if he had been involved in Lily's care all along. "The same limitations would apply," Richard assured them. 6 hours a week maximum, everything educational and age-appropriate, but we'd create a dedicated lab space designed specifically for Lily's needs. "A lab of my own?" Lily asked, her voice vibrating with excitement. "With special audio equipment." "Exactly," Amber smiled. "Customized for how you experience and interpret code." As the discussion continued, Sarah noticed Mark growing increasingly quiet, his expression thoughtful as he watched the interaction between Lily and the Vertex team. There was something in his eyes that made her uneasy, not the overt calculation she had feared months ago, but something more subtle and potentially more dangerous. Genuine belief in Lily's exceptional value, not as his daughter, but as an asset. The Nightingale Nexus project launched with considerable fanfare in the tech industry. Vertex's stock soared, and Richard Hammond was hailed as a visionary for recognizing that cybersecurity needed to evolve beyond traditional approaches. But only those inside Vertex knew the true source of the innovation. A small lab on the 41st floor where Lily Miller worked with specialized audio equipment that translated digital information into sound patterns she could interpret. The lab became Lily's sanctuary, a place where her blindness was not a disability, but the very source of her unique insights. The walls were covered in specialized acoustic panels that created the optimal environment for her to discern subtle patterns in code. There were no visual displays, only sophisticated audio interfaces and braille terminals. "It's perfect," Lily declared when she first explored the space, "like being inside my own brain." As Lily settled into her new role, Sarah found herself with an unexpected challenge, balancing her daughter's extraordinary opportunities with the need for a normal childhood. Lily was still a 7-year-old who needed playdates, bedtime stories, and scraped knees from playground adventures. Yet she was also becoming an increasingly valuable contributor to cutting-edge technology. "I'm worried she's missing out on being a kid," Sarah confided to Richard during one of their regular check-ins. "Between the Nexus project, Dr. Perez's research, and school, she barely has time to just play." Richard nodded thoughtfully. "You're right. Perhaps we've all been so dazzled by what she can do that we've forgotten what she needs to do. Be a child." They agreed to scale back Lily's involvement temporarily, reducing her hours at Vertex and putting the research work on hold for a month. Instead, Sarah enrolled Lily in a summer camp for visually impaired children, where the focus was entirely on fun, swimming, music, crafts, and making friends. Mark was surprisingly supportive of the decision. "She should have both worlds," he agreed during a co-parenting discussion, "the extraordinary and the ordinary." For 4 weeks, Lily was just another kid at camp, making friendship bracelets, singing silly songs, and coming home with the happy exhaustion of days spent entirely in play. Sarah watched her daughter blossom in different ways, becoming more spontaneous, more willing to make mistakes, more childlike. "I made 5 new friends," Lily reported excitedly after her first week, "and I learned to swim all the way across the pool without touching the sides." When Lily returned to her projects at Vertex and the Research Institute, there was a new balance to her schedule, with dedicated, just kid time built into each week. Sarah noticed that the break had actually enhanced Lily's abilities. She returned to her work with fresh perspectives and new insights. "Sometimes your brain needs to play to solve problems," Lily explained, with the simple wisdom children often possess. As the Nightingale Nexus project progressed, Mark's involvement with Lily continued to evolve. The consulting position had turned into a permanent role as Vertex's Director of Strategic Partnerships, a job he excelled at with his natural charisma and growing knowledge of the cybersecurity landscape. His visitation with Lily had increased to 2 full days per week, and he had remained consistent and reliable, a far cry from the volatile, irresponsible man who had abandoned them years earlier. "I think he's really changed," Sarah admitted to Amber during a rare girls' night out. "It's been over a year, and he hasn't slipped up once. No drinking, no missed visits, no inappropriate discussions about Lily's abilities with outsiders." Amber sipped her wine thoughtfully. "People can change. The question is whether they've changed fundamentally or just adapted to get what they want." "You still don't trust him," Sarah observed. "Let's just say I prefer to see sustained evidence before I fully trust someone who's hurt you both before," Amber replied carefully. "But I hope I'm wrong. I hope he has changed." The true test came unexpectedly during a routine weekend when Lily was staying at Mark's new apartment. Sarah received a call from Mark late Saturday evening, his voice tight with concern. "Lily has a fever," he reported. 102.3. "She's been throwing up for the last hour, and she says her head hurts badly." Sarah's heart raced. "I'll come get her right away." "Actually," Mark interrupted, "I think we should take her to the emergency room." This came on suddenly, and with her history of sensory sensitivity, I'm worried it could be meningitis. Sarah was momentarily stunned. Not by the suggestion itself, which was reasonable, but by the fact that Mark had remembered that detail about Lily's medical history, something she had mentioned only once during a parent-teacher conference months ago. "You're right," she agreed. "Which hospital are you taking her to?" "Mercy General is closest. I'll meet you there." By the time Sarah arrived at the emergency room, Mark was already at the reception desk with Lily in his arms, her small body limp against his shoulder. His face was creased with genuine worry, all traces of his usual confident charm gone. "Dad hasn't left me for 1 minute," Lily told Sarah weakly when they were finally settled in an examination room. "He kept telling me stories about when he was a kid to distract me from feeling sick." The diagnosis turned out to be a severe ear infection, not meningitis, but the doctor praised Mark's quick action. With her unique auditory processing, an infection like this could have been particularly distressing. You did the right thing bringing her in promptly. As they left the hospital with antibiotics and care instructions, Sarah realized something fundamental had shifted in her perception of Mark. For the first time, she had seen him act as a true father, not because of what he could gain from Lily, but because of what he could give to her. As Lily's 8th birthday approached, Sarah found herself in the unusual position of planning a celebration with Mark as a co-parent. They sat at Sarah's kitchen table one evening after Lily had gone to bed, comparing notes on gift ideas and party plans. "I was thinking of getting her that advanced audio programming system she's been talking about," Mark suggested. "The one that can translate visual patterns into sound compositions." Sarah nodded. "That's a good idea. I've been saving for a special Braille reader that connects to multiple devices simultaneously. She mentioned it would help her work more efficiently." They continued discussing options, surprised at how easily they were collaborating. The tension that had characterized their early interactions after Mark's return had gradually given way to a cautious co-parenting relationship that, while not friendly, was at least functional. "I never thought we'd be here," Mark admitted suddenly. "Sitting at a table like normal parents, planning our kid's birthday." Sarah looked up from her notes. "Neither did I, especially given how you came back into our lives." Mark had the grace to look ashamed. "I know my motives weren't pure at the beginning. When I saw that article about Lily, all I could think was that I'd missed out on something valuable, both emotionally and, yes, potentially financially." "And now?" Sarah asked, her voice carefully neutral. Mark was quiet for a moment. "Now I just want to be her dad. The rest, her abilities, her work at Vertex, the recognition, that's all secondary to just being there when she has an ear infection, or helping her build a model solar system, or hearing her laugh at my stupid jokes." The sincerity in his voice was unmistakable. Sarah found herself nodding slowly. "That's all I've ever wanted for her, someone who loves her for exactly who she is, not what she can do." "I'm getting there," Mark said honestly. "It's been a journey." The birthday celebration was held at Richard's lakeside home, a generous offer that provided privacy from the media that had become increasingly interested in Lily's story. The guest list included Lily's friends from school and camp, the core team from Vertex, Dr. C. Perez, and several children from the research program, and a handful of family members from both Sarah's and Mark's sides who had maintained connections over the years. Richard had gone all out with the preparations, hiring a company that specialized in sensory-rich experiences for children with various abilities. There were musical instruments that vibrated with different frequencies, scented play stations, textured art activities, and a sound garden where children could create music by moving through different zones. "This is amazing," Sarah told Richard as they watched Lily and her friends exploring the sound garden. "You've thought of everything." Richard smiled. "I consulted with Dr. Perez. The goal was to create an environment where all the children, regardless of their sensory profiles, could fully participate." Across the lawn, Mark was helping a group of children build a giant tactile puzzle, his easy manner with them revealing a side of him Sarah hadn't seen before. When he caught her watching, he gave a small, almost shy wave. "He's really stepped up," Richard observed. "I have to admit I had my doubts about him." "So did I," Sarah acknowledged, "but he's proven me wrong in the best possible way." Later, as Lily opened her gifts, her face lit up with delight at each thoughtfully chosen present. When she unwrapped the joint gift from Sarah and Mark, they had decided to combine resources for the audio programming system and the multi-device braille reader. She launched herself at both parents for a group hug. "This is the best birthday ever," she declared, "having both my parents and all my favorite people together." Or, as the party wound down and guests began to leave, Dr. Perez approached Sarah with an envelope. "I have something for Lily, but I wanted to discuss it with you first," she explained. "It's an opportunity that I think could be transformative for her." Inside the envelope was an invitation for Lily to join an intensive summer program at the Institute's international headquarters in Zurich, Switzerland. The program would bring together children with exceptional sensory processing abilities from around the world for 6 weeks of collaborative research and specialized education. "It's the first program of its kind," Dr. Perez explained. "These children often feel isolated in their unique ways of experiencing the world. This would give Lily a chance to be part of a community that truly understands her, while also advancing our understanding of sensory processing in extraordinary ways." Sarah scanned the materials, her heart racing. 6 weeks is a long time to be away from home, especially at her age. "Parents are welcome to accompany their children," Dr. Perez assured her. In fact, we encourage it. We're creating a holistic environment that supports the whole family. When would this start? Sarah asked. Next June, after the school year ends. That was 9 months away, plenty of time to consider and prepare. I'll need to discuss this with Mark and with Richard, since it would impact Lily's work at Vertex. Dr. Perez nodded understandingly. Of course, take all the time you need. But I wanted to extend the invitation personally, because I believe Lily has a unique contribution to make to our understanding of algorithmic auditory processing, and the other children in the program could benefit enormously from her perspective. As Dr. Perez left, Sarah found herself watching Lily, who was sitting with Richard by the lake, her small hands moving expressively as she described something that had him smiling and nodding attentively. 9 years ago, when Sarah had learned her newborn daughter was blind, she had been devastated, fearing a life of limitations and challenges. Never could she have imagined the extraordinary journey that lay ahead, or the remarkable community that would form around her exceptional child. The Zurich opportunity represented yet another unexpected fork in their path. But as Sarah had learned over the past year and a half, sometimes the most surprising turns led to the most beautiful destinations. The discussion about the Zurich program unfolded over several weeks, with Sarah, Mark, Richard, and eventually Lily herself weighing the pros and cons. For Sarah, the primary concern was whether such an intensive experience would be too much pressure on an 8-year-old, regardless of her exceptional abilities. I want her to have the opportunity, Sarah explained during a meeting with all the adults involved in Lily's life, but not at the expense of her childhood. Dr. Perez, who had been invited to join the conversation, nodded understandingly. That's precisely why we've designed the program with substantial unstructured time. The children will work together for only 4 hours each day. The rest is dedicated to play, cultural experiences, and family time. What about her work with Nightingale Nexus? Richard asked. We're at a critical development stage. The timing is actually ideal, Amber pointed out. We'll be moving from development to implementation by next summer. Lily's foundational work will be complete, and the distance collaboration could actually bring fresh perspectives. Mark had been unusually quiet during the discussion. When Sarah finally asked for his thoughts, he surprised everyone with his response. I think we should let Lily decide, he said simply. She's proven time and again that she understands her own capabilities and limits better than any of us. If we present her with all the information, the benefits and the challenges, she'll make the right choice for herself. There was a moment of silence as everyone considered this perspective. It was Richard who finally spoke. Mark's right. We've all been deciding what's best for Lily, but she's demonstrated remarkable judgment. Let's trust her with this decision. When presented with the opportunity, Lily asked thoughtful questions about the program structure, the other participants, and how her ongoing projects would be affected. She requested time to consider, and for 3 days she was unusually quiet, processing the decision in her methodical way. On the 4th day, as Sarah was preparing breakfast, Lily announced her decision. I want to go to Zurich, she said confidently, but I have conditions. Sarah couldn't help smiling at her daughter's businesslike tone. What are your conditions? First, I want both you and Dad to come, at least for part of the time. I need my family support system. Sarah nodded, though she wondered how Mark would manage 6 weeks away from his job. Second, Lily continued, I want to maintain my connection with Vertex and the Nightingale team through weekly virtual sessions. That seems reasonable, Sarah agreed. And third, I want to learn German before we go. If I'm going to be in Switzerland, I should be able to communicate with the local people. This last request caught Sarah by surprise. Learning a new language in 9 months is ambitious, sweetie, especially with everything else you're doing. "I can do it," Lily said with characteristic determination. "My auditory processing makes language acquisition easier for me. Dr. Perez says many people with my type of synesthesia excel at languages because we hear the patterns so clearly." With Lily's decision made, preparations began for what would become a pivotal chapter in their lives. Mark, to Sarah's surprise, immediately requested a 6-week leave of absence from Vertex for the following summer, which Richard approved without hesitation. "Family first," he said simply. The months leading up to the Zurich program were filled with activity. Lily divided her time between her ongoing work at Vertex, her regular studies at school, her German language lessons, and a pre-program orientation with Dr. Perez, designed to prepare her for the intensive experience ahead. Through it all, Sarah marveled at her daughter's capacity to balance multiple commitments without becoming overwhelmed. Lily approached each day with methodical organization, allocating specific time blocks to different activities and maintaining strict boundaries between work, study, and play. "Sometimes I think she's more disciplined than most adults I know," Sarah commented to Mark during one of their now regular co-parenting coffee meetings. "She gets that from you," Mark said, surprising Sarah with the compliment. "Your ability to persevere through challenges was always something I admired, even when I was too messed up to show it." As winter turned to spring, the reality of the upcoming journey to Switzerland became more concrete. Passports were renewed, accommodations were arranged, and Lily's progress in German accelerated remarkably. By April, she was holding basic conversations with her tutor and had developed a particular fondness for German poetry, which she said sang in her ears in a way that English never had. The Nightingale Nexus project reached a significant milestone in May, with the completion of the core algorithm that would form the foundation of Vertex's new integrated security ecosystem. At a celebration marking the achievement, Richard presented Lily with a custom-designed award, a crystal nightingale that emitted a unique series of tones when touched, representing the auditory patterns she had helped create. "This isn't just a token of our appreciation," Richard told her as he placed it in her small hands. "It's a reminder that your unique way of experiencing the world has changed our world for the better." Lily ran her fingers over the crystal bird, her expression thoughtful. "It sings the primary nightingale algorithm," she observed, recognizing the pattern immediately. "The one from the very beginning when we stopped the attack." Richard smiled. "We wanted you to have something tangible to connect you to Vertex while you're in Zurich, a piece of what you've built here to carry with you." As the departure date drew nearer, Sarah found herself experiencing a complex mix of emotions: pride in Lily's accomplishments, excitement for the opportunities ahead, but also a quiet anxiety about the changes this experience might bring. For the past year and a half, their lives had followed an unexpected but increasingly stable path. Zurich represented another leap into the unknown. The journey to Zurich marked Lily's first international trip. As their plane descended over the Swiss landscape, Sarah described the view to her daughter: the crystalline lake reflecting the morning sun, the orderly city nestled against the dramatic backdrop of the Alps, the distinctive blend of medieval architecture and modern innovation that characterized Zurich. "It smells different," Lily noted as they exited the airport. "Cleaner, with something sweet in the air. And the sounds are different too. The language has a musical rhythm to it." Mark, who had traveled ahead to ensure everything was prepared for their arrival, greeted them at the arrivals gate. "Welcome to Switzerland," he said, embracing Lily, and then, after a moment's hesitation, offering Sarah a friendly hug as well. Their accommodations exceeded expectations. A fully accessible apartment in a historic building that had been modernized specifically for the program participants. The Institute had thought of everything, from braille labeling throughout the space to specialized audio interfaces that help Lily navigate independently. "This will be home for the next 6 weeks," Mark said, as he guided them through the rooms. "The Institute is just a 10-minute walk away, and there's a lovely park right across the street." The program officially began the following day with a welcome reception for all participants and their families. 12 children from 9 different countries had been selected, each with unique sensory processing abilities. There was a 10-year-old from Japan who could identify microscopic patterns through touch that were invisible to the naked eye. Twin girls from Brazil who experienced mathematical equations as choreographed movements. A 9-year-old from Kenya who could reproduce any sound he heard with perfect accuracy, from bird calls to complex musical compositions. These children represent the extraordinary diversity of human neurological development, Dr. Perez explained to the assembled families. Each one processes information in ways that challenge our understanding of perception and cognition. Together, they will help us develop new approaches to education, technology, and sensory integration that could benefit countless others. Lily was initially quiet, overwhelmed by the new environment and the presence of so many unfamiliar people. But as the reception continued, Sarah watched with pride as her daughter gradually began engaging with the other children, her natural curiosity overcoming her reserve. "Mom, Hiroshi can feel the difference between types of code just by touching a screen," Lily reported excitedly after meeting the Japanese boy. "And Maria and Sophia dance equations. They're going to show me how it works by guiding my movements." The first week of the program established a rhythm that balanced structured learning and research activities with cultural experiences and free time. In the mornings, the children worked in small groups, exploring their unique sensory abilities through carefully designed experiments and collaborative projects. Afternoons were dedicated to cultural immersion, museum visits, musical performances, and excursions to local landmarks, all adapted to engage multiple senses. Sarah had initially planned to use the time while Lily was in sessions to catch up on her work at Vertex, which she was continuing remotely. But she found herself increasingly drawn to the parent workshops the Institute offered, where families shared their experiences raising children with exceptional sensory processing. "It's the first time I've been able to talk about these things with people who truly understand," she told Mark over dinner one evening after Lily had gone to bed. "The challenges, the joys, the constant adjustments, everyone here gets it without explanation." Mark nodded thoughtfully. "I've been thinking about how much I missed by not being there during those early years, when you were figuring it all out on your own." "You're here now," Sarah said after a moment. "That's what matters to Lily." As the program progressed, Lily flourished in ways Sarah hadn't anticipated. Beyond the formal research aspects, which she excelled at, Lily was developing deep friendships with the other children. They communicated in a mixture of languages and sensory expressions, creating their own unique culture that transcended traditional barriers. "They understand each other in ways that go beyond words," Dr. Perez observed during a parent consultation. "Each child has spent their life feeling different from their peers. Here, that difference is the very thing that connects them." In the third week, the children began working on collaborative projects that combined their various sensory abilities. Lily partnered with Hiroshi and Eliza, a 9-year-old from Scotland who experienced colors as specific scents, to develop a multi-sensory coding system that could be accessed through sound, touch, or smell. "We're calling it Universal Sensory Interface," Lily explained enthusiastically during her weekly virtual session with the Vertex team. "It could make technology accessible to people with all kinds of sensory profiles, not just those who can see or hear in typical ways." Richard was visibly impressed. This could have significant applications for Nightingale Nexus, especially as we expand into consumer applications. Would you be interested in continuing this development when you return to Vertex? Definitely, Lily agreed. But I want Hiroshi and Eliza involved too. We work better as a team because we each perceive different aspects of the code. After the call ended, Sarah reflected on how much Lily had grown in just a few short weeks, not just in her technical abilities, but in her understanding of collaboration and the value of diverse perspectives. The isolated child who had once connected more easily with computers than with peers was blossoming into a confident young person who recognized the strength in community. Mark, who had observed the virtual session, expressed similar thoughts. "She's finding her tribe," he said with obvious pride. "People who challenge and complement her in ways we can't." By the 5th week of the Zurich program, the collaborative projects had advanced to a stage where the children were preparing demonstrations for an audience of scientists, educators, and technology developers from around the world. Lily, Hiroshi, and Eliza had refined their universal sensory interface to include a working prototype that translated digital information into multiple sensory formats simultaneously. "Watch this," Lily said during a practice session with her parents. She initiated a sequence on the specialized terminal the Institute had provided, and suddenly the room filled with a harmonic progression of tones, while a panel beneath Hiroshi's fingers vibrated with corresponding patterns. "I can feel exactly what Lily is hearing," Hiroshi explained. "Different types of data create different tactile signatures." Eliza, a red-headed girl with freckles scattered across her nose, inhaled deeply, "And I can smell the security protocols activating. They're like cinnamon and cloves, with a hint of something metallic when authentication occurs." Sarah and Mark exchanged amazed glances. The children had created something truly revolutionary, a system that made digital information accessible through whatever sensory channel worked best for an individual user. "This could transform accessibility technology," Sarah said, "not just for people with sensory disabilities, but for anyone who processes information in non-standard ways." The final presentation day arrived with considerable anticipation. Representatives from major technology companies, research institutions, and educational organizations filled the Institute's main auditorium. Richard had flown in specifically for the event, as had Amber and several other members of the Vertex team. "No pressure," Mark joked nervously as he helped Lily prepare that morning. "Just the future of sensory interface technology riding on 3 kids under 10. Lily laughed, remarkably calm despite the significance of the occasion. "We're not nervous. We know it works because we can all access the same information in our own ways. That's the whole point." The children's demonstration exceeded all expectations. As Lily, Hiroshi, and Eliza guided the audience through their creation, explaining the principles behind the universal sensory interface and demonstrating its capabilities, the room fell into an astonished silence, broken only by occasional gasps of recognition at the implications of what they were witnessing. When the presentation concluded, the applause was thunderous. Dr. Perez, who had been observing from the side of the stage, stepped forward with visible emotion. "What these young innovators have created goes beyond technology," she said to the audience. "It challenges our fundamental assumptions about how information should be structured and accessed. They haven't just designed a new interface, they've reimagined the relationship between human perception and digital systems." The aftermath of the presentation was a whirlwind of interest and excitement. Representatives from technology companies, including Vertex's competitors, approached Sarah and Mark with business cards and expressions of interest in supporting the continued development of the universal sensory interface. Richard, ever protective of Lily's well-being, skillfully managed these interactions, ensuring that the focus remained on the educational and accessibility implications rather than commercial exploitation. This technology deserves to be developed with the children's vision at its core, he insisted. That's the approach Vertex is committed to supporting. As the excitement of the presentation day gradually subsided, the families of the participating children gathered for a celebration dinner at a traditional Swiss restaurant overlooking Lake Zurich. The children, temporarily freed from the spotlight, reverted to being just kids, laughing, sharing inside jokes in their mixture of languages, and planning to stay in touch after the program ended. Watching Lily with her new friends, Sarah felt a profound sense of gratitude. The journey that had begun with a desperate mother bringing her blind child to work out of necessity had led to this moment. Her daughter, surrounded by peers who valued and understood her, contributing to innovations that could help countless others. Mark joined her at the edge of the terrace, handing her a glass of wine. "Penny, for your thoughts?" "I was just thinking about how far we've come," Sarah replied. "All of us." Mark nodded, his gaze on Lily. "I know I have no right to take any credit. I wasn't there when it mattered most. But you're here now," Sarah said, surprising herself with the genuine forgiveness in her voice. "And you've become the father she deserves." Later that night, as Sarah tucked an exhausted but happy Lily into bed, her daughter asked a question that caught her off guard. "Mum, when we go home, will everything go back to how it was before?" Sarah sat on the edge of the bed, considering her response. "Some things will, sweetie. You'll go back to school and your work at Vertex. But other things will be different because you've changed. You've grown in ways that can't be undone." Lily was quiet for a moment. "I like who I am here," she said finally, "with friends who understand me and projects that matter." "We'll find ways to continue what you've started," Sarah promised. "The connections you've made, both with people and with ideas, those don't have to end just because the program does." As Lily drifted off to sleep, Sarah remained beside her, reflecting on the challenges that lay ahead. The final week in Zurich would pass quickly, and then they would return to their lives in America, lives that now needed to accommodate Lily's expanded horizons and deepened sense of purpose. The universal sensory interface had potential far beyond what they had initially imagined. Richard was already discussing the possibility of establishing a dedicated development team at Vertex, with remote participation from Hiroshi, Eliza, and the other children who had contributed to its creation. But beyond the technological innovations, Sarah knew that the most significant development was in Lily herself. The child, who had once been defined primarily by her blindness and then by her exceptional abilities, had now found her own identity, one that incorporated but wasn't limited by either of these aspects of her experience. The return to America after 6 transformative weeks in Zurich required significant adjustments. Lily, having experienced the rich community of peers at the Institute, initially struggled with the relative isolation of being back home. Despite the warmth of her welcome at Vertex and the continued virtual connections with her international friends, there was an undeniable sense of loss. "I miss being around people who hear and feel things the way I do," she confided to Sarah one evening, 3 weeks after their return. "Everyone here tries to understand, but it's not the same." Sarah, who had anticipated this challenge, had already been working with Richard and Dr. Perez on a solution. "Actually, I have some news that might help with that," she told Lily. "Richard has approved funding for a satellite branch of the Institute right here, in partnership with Vertex. Dr. Perez will be coming to set it up next month." Lily's face lit up. "Really? Will Hiroshi and Eliza and the others visit?" "Even better," Sarah smiled. "Dr. Perez is organizing quarterly intensive weekends, where everyone from the Zurich program can reunite and continue your collaborative work. And she's identifying other children in the US, with similar sensory processing profiles, to join a local cohort. Indeed, the establishment of the Institute's American branch became a central focus for both Sarah and Mark in the months that followed. Sarah took on an official role as the liaison between Vertex and the Institute, while Mark leveraged his connections in the tech industry to secure additional partnerships and funding. Meanwhile, development of the Universal Sensory Interface progressed rapidly. Richard, recognizing the revolutionary potential of the technology, established a dedicated team at Vertex to work under Lily's guidance, with regular input from her international collaborators via specialized communication systems that accommodated their various sensory preferences. By December, 9 months after their return from Zurich, a preliminary version of the Universal Sensory Interface was ready for limited release to educational institutions serving children with sensory processing differences. The initial feedback exceeded even their optimistic projections. "We've received reports of nonverbal children communicating through the system in ways they never could before," Amber reported during a project review meeting. "And students who struggled with traditional learning methods are demonstrating abilities that surprised even their long-term teachers." Lily, now approaching her 9th birthday, had matured remarkably through the experience. The successful girl who had saved Vertex from a cyber attack was evolving into a thoughtful young innovator with a clear sense of purpose. "I want to make technology that works for everyone's brain, not just typical brains," she explained to a journalist during a rare approved interview. "Because different isn't broken, it's just different." As winter turned to spring, an unexpected opportunity arose. The prestigious Global Innovation Summit, held annually in Singapore, extended an invitation for Lily to deliver a keynote address alongside Dr. Perez, focusing on the future of adaptive technology and cognitive diversity. The invitation prompted another family conference, with Sarah, Mark, Richard, and Amber carefully considering the implications. Unlike previous opportunities, this one would place Lily firmly in the international spotlight, with all the benefits and challenges that entailed. "She's still only 9, Sarah reminded everyone, "and while I'm immensely proud of her accomplishments, I'm concerned about the pressure of such a high-profile event." "I understand your concerns," Richard acknowledged. "But I've watched Lily handle situations that would intimidate most adults with remarkable poise. This platform would allow her message about cognitive diversity to reach those with the power to implement real change." Mark, who had remained quiet during much of the discussion, finally spoke up. "What if we make it a family presentation? Instead of putting all the pressure on Lily, the 3 of us could present together. Sarah with her perspective on accessible design, me with the business case for inclusive technology, and Lily as the innovative force behind the Universal Sensory Interface." The suggestion surprised everyone, especially Sarah. It was the first time Mark had explicitly included himself as part of their family unit in a public context. More surprising still was how natural it felt to consider the possibility. When presented with the modified proposal, Lily immediately embraced it. "I like that idea. It's honest about how this all works. I didn't do any of this alone. I had Mom and Dad, and Richard and Amber and Dr. Perez, and all my friends from Zurich." The preparation for the Singapore summit became a unifying project for the unconventional family that had formed around Lily. Sarah, Mark, and Lily spent evenings and weekends refining their presentation, each contributing their unique perspective to the narrative of how a crisis had transformed into an opportunity for innovation. 2 weeks before they were scheduled to depart for Singapore, Sarah received an unexpected call from Richard asking her to come to his office immediately. When she arrived, she found him looking uncharacteristically serious. "What's wrong?" she asked, immediately concerned. "We've detected unusual activity in the systems connected to the Universal Sensory Interface development," he explained. Someone appears to be attempting to access the core architecture, not through a traditional cyber attack, but through a series of seemingly legitimate queries that, taken together, could be an attempt to reverse engineer the technology. Sarah felt a chill. Do we know who's behind it? Richard hesitated. Not definitively, but the pattern bears similarities to methods used by quantum sphere technologies. Mark's former employer, Sarah said quietly, the implications immediately clear. Before joining Vertex, Mark had briefly worked for Quantum Sphere, one of their main competitors, during the period when he had re-entered Lily's life. We have no evidence that Mark is involved, Richard emphasized, and I'm not suggesting he is. But given his past connection, we need to be particularly careful about information security leading up to the Singapore presentation. Sarah nodded, her mind racing. Mark had proven himself in countless ways over the past 2 years, becoming a reliable father, contributing meaningfully to Vertex, supporting Lily's development without trying to exploit her abilities. Could all of that have been an elaborate deception? She didn't want to believe it. But as she left Richard's office, a small seed of doubt had been planted, one that would need to be addressed before they stepped onto the global stage together as a family. 6 months later, the Singapore summit was a distant memory, a triumphant one that had launched the universal sensory interface into global recognition and established Lily as a leading voice in accessible technology despite her young age. The suspicions about Mark had proven unfounded. The security breach had been traced to a former Vertex employee working independently, with no connection to Quantum Sphere or to Mark. The family that had formed around Lily, unconventional, resilient, and deeply committed to her well-being, had not only survived the momentary crisis of trust, but emerged stronger for having confronted and resolved it openly. On a warm Saturday morning in September, almost exactly 2 years since the day Sarah had brought Lily to work at Vertex out of desperate necessity, they gathered on the patio of Sarah's house for a celebratory brunch. Richard and Amber were there, along with Dr. Perez, who had relocated permanently to oversee the Institute's American branch. Several of Lily's friends from school and from the local cohort of the Institute's program had been invited as well. The occasion was significant. Vertex and the Institute were announcing a joint non-profit foundation dedicated to developing and distributing adaptive technology based on the universal sensory interface. The foundation would ensure that the innovations Lily and her collaborators had created would reach those who needed them most, regardless of economic circumstances. To the Sensory Innovation Foundation, Richard toasted, raising his glass of orange juice, and to the extraordinary young people who made it possible. As conversations flowed around her, Sarah found herself watching Lily, now 9.5 years old, confidently navigating the social gathering. She moved between groups with ease, her white cane tapping lightly as she joined a cluster of friends near the garden, then engaged Dr. Perez and Amber in what appeared to be a serious discussion about their latest project. Mark approached, handing Sarah a fresh cup of coffee. "Penny, for your thoughts." It had become his habitual question when he found her in moments of reflection. "I was just thinking about that first day at Vertex," Sarah replied. "How terrified I was of losing that job, how desperate our circumstances were. If someone had told me then where we'd be now." Mark nodded. "It's been quite a journey." After a moment, he added more quietly, "Thank you for giving me a second chance to be part of it. I know I didn't deserve it." "You've earned your place here," Sarah said simply. "You're the father she needs you to be now." Their conversation was interrupted by Lily's approach. "Mum, Dad, Mr. Hammond wants to talk to us about something important." They followed her to a quiet corner of the patio where Richard waited. His expression was serious but not somber. I wanted to discuss this with the three of you privately before making any public announcement, he began. As you know, I've been considering my succession plan at Vertex for some time now. Sarah nodded. Richard had mentioned occasionally that at 60, he was beginning to think about the next chapter of his life, though he had never discussed specific plans. The success of the universal sensory interface, and now the Foundation, has clarified my thinking, he continued. I want to dedicate more of my energy to the non-profit side of our work, ensuring these technologies reach those who need them most. That sounds wonderful, Richard, Sarah said, though she sensed there was more to come. It is, but it means stepping back from day-to-day operations at Vertex. He smiled at Sarah. Which is why I'm planning to recommend you to the board as my successor, Sarah. She stared at him in shock. Me? But I've only been with the company for 2 years, and my background isn't even in technology. Your background is in understanding people and their needs, Richard interrupted gently, in recognizing potential and nurturing it. In building bridges between different perspectives. Those are precisely the qualities Vertex needs in its next leader. Mark placed a supportive hand on Sarah's shoulder. He's right, Sarah. You've transformed how Vertex approaches accessibility, not just as a feature, but as a fundamental design principle. The company's entire philosophy has evolved under your influence. Lily, who had been listening intently, spoke up. Does this mean Mom would be the boss of everybody at Vertex? Richard laughed. Essentially, yes, though I'd remain on the board, and the transition would be gradual over the next year. Sarah's mind was racing. From a struggling single mother to the CEO of a major technology company in just over 2 years seemed impossible, and yet, as she reflected on the journey that had brought them to this moment, she recognized that each challenge had prepared her for the next in ways she couldn't have anticipated. I'd need to think about it, she said finally. It's an enormous responsibility. Of course, Richard agreed. Take all the time you need. The formal recommendation won't happen for several months. As the brunch continued around them, Sarah found herself looking at Lily with new eyes. Her daughter, the unexpected catalyst for all of this change, was growing into a remarkable young person with gifts that extended far beyond her technical abilities. Her empathy, her resilience, her capacity to bridge different worlds. These were the qualities that had truly transformed their lives and the lives of countless others. The path ahead would undoubtedly bring new challenges. The technology Lily and her collaborators were developing would continue to evolve, requiring constant adaptation and thoughtful leadership. Lily herself would continue to grow, navigating the complex terrain of adolescence with her unique perspective on the world. And the unconventional family unit they had created, Sarah, Lily, Mark, with Richard Amber and Dr. Perez in their extended circle, would continue to find its way forward together. But as Sarah watched her daughter laugh with her friends in the dappled sunlight of a perfect September day, she felt a profound sense of peace. Whatever came next, they would face it with the same combination of courage, creativity, and connection that had brought them to this moment. 2 years ago, she had been a desperate mother with a blind daughter, struggling to keep a job cleaning offices at night. Now she stood at the threshold of a future brighter than anything she could have imagined, not despite the challenges they had faced, but because of how they had transformed them into opportunities. As if sensing her mother's thoughts, Lily turned toward Sarah, her unseeing eyes somehow finding her with unerring accuracy. She smiled, a smile full of confidence and joy, before returning to her conversation with friends. In that simple gesture was everything Sarah needed to know. Whatever path they chose, they would walk it together, turning obstacles into stepping stones, just as they always had.